One of the craziest fights I saw in prison went from involving real weapons to plastic chairs, and it turned from a real fight into almost like a circus act. So this was at Nottoway, and there were two guys who were beefing and having words and going back and forth, and one guy was slipping. So he was in the very corner cell in the pod to where like the booth couldn't really see very well, nobody else could really see, and like it was generally considered like the best cell because you're quiet and you're out of the way. But he was slipping because he had, the bottom bunk and the top bunk, and he'd hung a sheet over the side so he couldn't see anything from the door. So he, light or whatever was going on wouldn't distract him. But that meant the other guy could sneak up on him. So the other guy took his state belt, he looped it around, and he clipped the padlock on it. So he's got like a long weapon with a whole lot of weight at the end that he could smash. He walked in, pulled the curtain back, and just started smashing dude in the face. And it was really bad, and it was really ugly. And I guess he knocked the guy out because he just walked out of there like, not checking his back. I guess he figured the guy was just done for. So he walks out in the pod, he gets rid of the belt, he gets rid of the lock, and he's just feeling like things are cool. He's just sitting there talking to somebody. The guy comes out of the cell. I'm talking about just leaking, like just blood everywhere, covering his shirt, just like pouring onto the ground. Like if you've ever seen somebody just really leaking, it's a disturbing thing in itself. And he's got a belt with, I guess, a clip on the end or something on the end of it that he's like swinging like a whip. And he's got a pencil that I guess he's going to stab him with. So he comes out and he starts swinging this, and the other guy's gotten rid of his weapon, so he's just like backing up and trying to figure out what to do, and he sees we have these plastic chairs you have in the cell. So he picks a plastic chair up and he's doing like a lion tamer thing. He's like trying to keep the guy away, and so every time the other guy swings the belt, it gets caught on the edge of the chair, it gets caught on the leg or whatever. He can't hit the guy. So he puts the belt down and picks up a plastic chair, and then they're like sitting here poking the legs of a chair at each other, and it looks like they're playing. It doesn't look like a real fight. Then finally they start like swinging them like this and cracking them, but just holding the chair up to block. So the chairs are breaking, but they don't like shatter. They just kind of like crack, and then they're just hanging on. So it's like a flimsy plastic chair versus a flimsy plastic chair. And they're doing this, but it's really loud, and they're right in the middle of the pod, right in front of the booth where the officers are. So the officers call a call, but you can tell they're not like really excited because they can't tell if it's a joke or if they're playing. And then they notice the guy is just literally covered in blood, and they start freaking out and screaming like, "Oh my God!" So the officers come running in, but even they're like, man, what is going on? Because there's like a pool of blood on the ground. The dude's whole shirt is just covered in blood. He's still leaking from his face, but they're doing this thing that almost looks like they're playing. So they go, "Oh yeah, put it down. And they're holding the mace. And the other guy, the one who had originally hit him, who is completely unmarked, he just puts the chair down and steps back. And the other guy goes after him, so they mace him full on in the face. And I'm trying to imagine what mace or OC spray has to feel like going in not only to your eyes and to your mouth, but into open wounds on your face. Like that has to be absolutely horrendous. Mason, he literally goes down to his knees and starts screaming. Like, if you ever want to hear one of the most dehumanizing things in the world, listen to a person screaming in agony. Like that still haunts me to this day. So they put them both in handcuffs. They got this guy off the ground and they dragged him out. And then they were trying to figure out, well, what do we do? So they called lockdown, and we all locked down. And there's just, again, like puddles of blood all in the pod. And so they call the hazmat guys in, and they come in and they clean it up. And then they just open the doors right back up. And this was, I don't know, about my third year in prison. And I was like, we just watched people like try to kill each other. And here, like 20 minutes later, you're just letting us back out in the pod like things are normal. What somebody explained to me, which I hadn't fully understood to that point, is they're like, look, it wasn't gang politics. Like it wasn't a bigger issue. It was just two people. Why would they keep us locked down? And I guess in a sense that makes sense, right? Like that's reasonable. But to me, it was still like, I hadn't yet become totally desensitized to the violence in prison. So watching the guy leaking so much blood, watching this happen, I was still like, shouldn't something happen? Like, shouldn't there be an intervention? Shouldn't we have done something to stop this? Because I was friends with one of the guys. I was friends with the guy who actually hit him initially with the lock, and I didn't do anything. Like when I saw them arguing, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I didn't realize he was going to take it to that level. I thought it was just, guys being unhappy or, being in the heat. It's 100 degrees. They're frustrated. Like, I didn't realize that's what's going to happen. And that was when I started to realize, like, hey, I need to take a vested interest in what's going on. Like, I don't want to pay attention and I don't want to get involved in politics. But if I know somebody and I can try to do one little thing to take them away from violence or do one little thing to, like, keep them from doing something stupid or crazy or hurting somebody or doing lasting harm, like, I have to do that. And that was still uncomfortable to me because I was a kid. I was like 20 or 21 years old at that point. Like I didn't know how to step up and like be a leader and, tell people what to do. But what I realized is somebody had to, because if people weren't talking each other down, they would escalate and feel like they had to and feel driven by fear and ego and all these other things. And I saw some horrible things happen because people didn't act. Because people didn't get in between them, because people didn't try to talk them down, because people didn't do anything. And I was one of those people. I am just as culpable as everybody else for not stepping in to try to stop the violence. And that was why at that point I realized I need to try to make a difference. And from then on, anytime I saw something brewing, if there was a way I could intervene, if there was a way I could de-escalate, I tried to do so.